All right, welcome out. Here we are. We're in the second part, chapter 10. Last time we talked about making decisions. Today we're getting into problem solving. Let's look at it. Most of the points we've made about decision making can also be made about problem solving. That seems to be a common pattern with this text. What is gone over in one area of inquiry, investigation into critical thinking, is applicable to other areas. And that's common with a lot of um, ideas, established ideas, I guess we could say. Problems are embedded in the fabric of our lives almost to the same extent that decisions are. There you go. Every domain of decision making is also the domain in which we have to solve problems. Every decision has an impact on our problems, either to minimize them or to contribute to them. Poor decisions create problems. Many problems can be avoided by sound decision making early on. Right? There's a statement in there somewhere, and it was coming to me as I was reading this, and it's got something. What is it? You can't solve the problem with the same decision making that caused it. Something to that effect, right? So it seems to be a general statement of understanding, I guess, right? Becoming an activist problem solver or an active. I don't know why they say active. Activist problem solver, like you're out in the streets, an activist for problem solving. Most problems, however, do not go away by themselves, but must be dealt with actively one way or another. True. And I can attest to that fact. There are certain things, minor, mid, and major, that I have to deal with. And if I don't deal with them, they just sit there uh, in existence in the back of my mind on my to-do calendar or list, and they don't go away. And if I let them sit too long and I don't resolve them or do something, it causes disruption in the force, I guess we could say, right? Disruption in our existence, our healthy, stable state of mind, I guess, state of being. It is therefore in your interest to become an activist problem solver. Let me just say it again. Activist problem solver, to go after problems before they come after you. Yes. And make difficult decisions in a rational manner. That's true. The ancient Hawaiians had a saying, either you eat life or life eats you. That's kind of like what I've said about, yeah, that's it. Um, Either life, how does it go now? I have a different slant on that. Um, Life is dictating to you, or you dictate to life, right? Life beats you up about the ears, or you assert your uh, energy on life, on moving forward, becoming active, an active decision maker, problem solver, right? That type of a person. Just and that comes in many shapes and forms. For instance, I tell my students and clients, as regards education, don't just allow a college or a degree to dictate to you what you need. Do you need what that degree needs? I don't know. Well, who are you? First, you got to find out who you are. That Briggs-Myers typology test will really help. It will compartmentalize you. There's 16 basic personality types. I know what I am, right? You can't really do anything unless you know what you are, unless you define things, right? If you don't define things, then you're just shots in the dark, right? You got a blindfold on, somebody spins you around, they give you a dart, now hit the dartboard. That's what you're doing, right? Good luck with that. I tell you, it doesn't work. Either you're acting upon life or life's acting upon you. That's my coin phrase. It's probably been said. many times in different ways, but that's it, right? And once I made the decision to flip it, to flip the switch, flip the scenario when I was in my mid late 20s, it has since made all the difference in the world. All the difference in the world. Either you eat life or life eats you. Either life eats you or you eat life. I like it the other way around first, because usually that's how it starts. Life is eating you, and then you have to decide to eat life. Eat life. I don't know about that. You act upon life, or life will act upon you. Right? Um, but I was saying that you really got to take charge. You got to be large and in charge. You got to be a guru of you. You got to understand you. That Briggs Myers typology test will really help. Once I thoroughly understood that I am an open-ended, abstract, creative thinker, problem solver who can solve other people's problems, but has a difficult problem signing, um, resolving or focusing on, I guess we could say, um, my own problems or familial problems, problems that are more intimate. I'm really good at solving, educational problems or larger problems, more systemic, removed third person party problems than I am with first person. It's just, that's kind of how I'm wired. So you're going to find out you have to find out how you're wired. So I'm an open-ended, abstract, critical thinker who likes to problem solve, uh, very creative, uh, and I use that understanding of me, or have used it to great effect, to really establish not only who I am, but to use that, to work with that, to be, going down a career path or preparing myself or doing things, learning things, skills, knowledge, and attitude that I need that will maximize my strengths. Maximize your strengths, minimize your weaknesses, right? And in Mother Goose, we find the following observation: for every problem under the sun, there is a solution, or there is none. That's Mother Goose. Sounds like the doctor says. If there be one, seek till you find it. If there be none, then never mind it. I don't know how well that goes over with stuff that has to be taken care of, but yeah, I think you get the gist of it, right? You should begin by recognizing the kinds of problems you face. Problems can be divided into two types, and I think we've come upon this number two before, right? Problems that we resolve, I'll be all right. Thank you. Problems that we ourselves have created by our own decisions of behavior, problems created by forces outside of ourselves, right? Let us then divide each of these into two groups. Problems that we can solve in the whole or in part, problems beyond our control. All right, that's good. So there's a lot of things that we can't control, right? You kind of have to let them go and invest your emotions, time, and energy in stuff that you can control, right? Um, if you follow sports teams, don't take that too seriously, right? You got to let that stuff go. The players, the organization, even the fans don't know you. You're kind of a sole entity floating out here, rooting for a team. Nobody knows you. The fans don't know you. There might be a few fans, and people invest way too much in winning and losing. And I've heard that sports, any sport, but professional sports specifically, is not about winning, it's about losing. How about that? Yeah, because the majority of the time you're losing. Even the greatest teams, like Yankees, 27 championships, baseball, basketball, what is it, Celtics with 18, right? They're still losing the majority of the time. And even Michael Jordan said that, right? Michael Jordan said, the reason I succeed more than most is because I've taken more shots and missed more shots. Right. And I just saw this stat on his career, his early career, that he uh, was 0-6 against Larry Bird and the Celtics in the early goings. He didn't win any championships for, I don't know, 7, 8 years, for 7, 8, 9 years of his career. But that's common. If you look at most, in the NBA, I looked at this. I don't know about baseball, but in the NBA, most of those who have multiple championships didn't win their first one until they were in their late 20s, like 27, 28. Your Birds and your Magic, maybe they're a little bit of an exception. But MJ, LeBron, uh, and others, it's usually later. Um, Clearly, we are apt to have the best chance of solving problems that we ourselves have created, for we often have the capacity to reverse decisions we made previously and modify behavior in which we previously engaged, right? So let's highlight that for retention purposes. Right? So now you have to evaluate, look at, analyze, label. How can you determine the extent to which your problem solving is irrational? Irrational problem solving comes in at least two forms. Again, the number two, right? Um, the number three and the number seven are also popular numbers. If you're trying to take in and process information, the human brain generally takes in information in clumps of three and four, right? Like a phone number. It's usually broken up into 3 and 4 digits, 818-671-4921, right? Well, you get the one, but that does count. 1-800-692-4738, right? Even 16-digit credit card numbers are broken into four groups, right? So, and if you look at religious things, it's the Holy Trinity, 1, 2, 3. If you look at, for instance, writing essays, how many paragraphs or middle sections generally are there? Three. You could do two's too little, 4 and 5 unnecessary. Three's about right. You can go 4 and 5, but three is a good number. So it's interesting. And math, if you study mathematics, read about mathematics and numbers and how numbers and number systems work. Generally, there's a lot of order to the universe, right? Math will usually dictate, or the formulas, mathematical formulas, will usually dictate to the physicist what he or she needs to do in order to solve a problem, solve an energy problem, or solve a matter problem, or whatever, motion, matter, energy, right? So it's an interesting, and anything beyond, we can probably do things in maybe strings of 3 to 5, but you get up to 7, and I've proven this. I gave a talk one time, long time ago, on the concept of memorization at the college level, or in education in general, but specifically at the college level, and some other issues relevant to that. And I flashed a 16-digit credit card number on the screen, and I said, everybody, put pens and pencils down, put your hands behind your back. If you can take those 16 digits in and remember them, I'm going to put it up there just long enough so you can read it. So it'll probably be like, how long does it take? What did I do? 7 seconds or something? 7, 8 seconds where you're reading it, 413-819-643-2841. Yeah, maybe 5 to 7 seconds. So I flash it. I gave him a little extra time, like 7 seconds, right? And nobody was able to get beyond about 7 digits, right? And I said, what's interesting about that is that's the number to my gold card, which has about a $10,000 limit on it, and I haven't used it at all. And I was going to allow you to have at it if you were able to. memorize that number. The student very upset that I told him after. I said, "What do you think? I'm nuts. I'm going to tell you before." Anyways, pseudo solution, not real, semi solution, fake solution, solutions that seem to solve the problem but don't, right? Like pseudo intellectual, not really an intellectual, like a cardboard intellectual, a fake, false, partial, weak intellectual. Solutions that solve the problem at the expense of the rights and needs of others, right? Both forms of irrational problem solving involve self-deception. Oh, that's huge. And this seems, let's do this. Let's do, there it is. Right? I talked about this before. At the root of our bad thinking is self-deception. We are always working against ourselves by being unrealistic, right? I don't want to say always, but frequently, most of the time, often, deceiving ourselves, right? We believe or want to believe we're intelligent or that we know something, even though what we think we know, we've never really looked into, don't know much about, but we believe it. We want to believe it with all our heart, mind, and soul. And because we want to believe it, need to believe it, or think we have to believe it, we just believe it, right? A lot of people, I don't know what percentage, but more than 50, probably more than 60%, or maybe even more than 70. Many people believe in things that they've never studied out at all. They have certain economic beliefs, people talking about socialism, democratic socialism, and they don't know the first thing about it or what it is really, right? And I've seen the interviews often where people in the street will be asked, well, what's your um, economic theory of choice? You know, what do you believe in? Free markets, capitalism, same thing. Socialism, uh, central planning. What is it? Democratic socialism. People don't even know what that is, right? They kind of vaguely, or they have certain political beliefs, socioeconomic beliefs, beliefs about achievement, beliefs about school, or whatever, right? And we also are self-deceptive in the sense that we really very rarely listen to what other people are saying or listen well, right? And we swear we're good listeners. We swear we're good thinkers. We swear we know things, right? But we're very self-deceiving. And once I realized how self-deceiving I was, I slowed down, became much more skeptical and realistic and calm, right? And deliberate about whether or not I believe something, that I believe something, that I know I believe something. Anyways, both require that we not notice the prime characteristics of the solution we have guaranteed, generated. Both are prevalent in human life. We all have basic needs, values, desires. Frustration comes when we are not successfully getting what we need, value, or desire. That's huge, right? That's a big one. That gets a highlight. Frequently, we confess true and false needs, rational and irrational values and desires. Consequently, we often seek to satisfy false needs and obtain irrational ends. There it is, right? That's a lot of our, there we go. That's a lot of our self-deception going on there, right? Dissolving, something wrong with my mouth there. Dissolving pseudo problems that exist because we are seeking to satisfy false needs or gain irrational ends have to be dissolved, not solved. We dissolve pseudo problems by dissolving the needs or irrational ends that have generated the problems in the first place. You can see that just from going over this text for some time, we're well into it, that to really get this stuff to take hold, for this stuff to really work for you, that's the key word, work. It's going to take a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of consistent, day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. Do you want to change or not? I was watching the short Netflix series on this uh, uh, female, back in the 50s, I guess it was, female chess champion, right? Queen something. Now the title of the series is eluding me. You probably might know what it is. And she, back in the day, women didn't participate. If they did want to play chess, they had to play against other women. And she jumped right in and started playing against men. And she eventually beat the unbeatable chess master from Russia, right? And a lot of her male friends, chess players, very good U.S. champions and great chess players, helped her to win in the end, right? But she was one of the few that was really dedicated to it, right? There were several who started out strong, but even mentioned to her, I'm not as dedicated to it as you are, right? So to learn anything of considerable depth and merit and import and purpose and impact takes a lot of work, consistent work. I've been working on critical thinking and thinking better, thinking well, 25, 30 years at least. To test an apparent need, ask yourself first the following question: do I need or just want this? Ooh, that's a good one. That gets see if I can get that in there. In there like that. That's an important, do you really need it or just want it, right? Most children and many adults use the word need as a synonym for want, but when we are being precise, we recognize that it's impossible to want many things one doesn't actually need. There is a world of difference between the statement, I need food to live, and I need a sports car to be happy, right? And that's a great example of thought that way. Some irrational values and ends are manifested in our lives in ways other than being camouflaged by the word need. For example, bureaucracies often create networks of regulations that create rather than solve problems, and that one you should look into, right? People think that the government passing regulations is the. I guess we'll go. That's not gonna work. Passing regulations is the end all. Oh, it's gonna. There we go. Is the end all and the cure all. That's going to solve all the problems. It's going to take care of any issues that the government needs to control in regards to maybe business or politics or whatever. Just regulate the businesses, regulate the politicians, regulate the systems to solve all our problems. Just regulate, solve all the problems. The true function of these regulations may be to make life easier for the bureaucrat, same time that they make life inconvenient for the user of the bureaucracy. Politicians sometimes pass laws that sacrifice the public interest to the vested interest of their financial supporters. An irrational value or end, then, is one that does more harm than good. Many fall into the category of practices that serve the interest or desires of a few at the expense of the many. So this is all gold, I gotta say. For example, some students rotely, right? To learn by rote is just memorizing, right? Rotely memorize the meanings of key ideas for a test because it's easier than taking the time to actually learn what the idea means. This is irrational. For subsequent work, typically requires student understanding. Soon the students are lost and their work and self-esteem suffer accordingly. Their irrational way to learn is common in math and science classes. Yes, it is a typical self-defeating behavior of students. And imagine you're taking a particular major and what you're learning is cumulative. You have some elective classes, but your major, the classes in your major are usually cumulative. And they build upon one upon the other, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year, right? So if you're just memorizing stuff and passing a test and purging what you've learned and forgetting it, never mind trying to connect it in the future to what it needs to be connected to, then your whole education is a sham, right? Big problems, two kinds, here we go. Our lucky number two. The two kinds of big problems to learn to watch for in life are problems for which our response will have obvious long-term consequences, problems whose long-term consequences must be discovered. Right? It is dangerous to respond to either of these types of big problems in a passive way. Yes. Key. Let us visit dimensions of problem solving. Let us visit the dimensions of problem solving which are similar to the dimensions of decision making. These dimensions do not define a procedure that can be followed mindlessly or mechanically. They presuppose, come before, good judgment, sound thinking, right? Figure out and regularly re-articulate and re-evaluate your goals, purposes, and needs. And this was spoken to before. This is not new to this text or to anything that you're trying to learn, right? If we were to automatically achieve our goals and purposes and fulfill our needs, we would have no problems or challenging decisions to make. Problems, therefore, must be recognized as arising from two sources. There's our two again, right? Obstacles or opportunities to reaching our goals, achieving our purposes, satisfying our needs, misconceptions, and divining goal, purpose, needs. Taking the second problem first, sometimes the misconception or mistake lies in our very definitions of what is worth seeking or achieving, or what we think needs. Skilled critical thinkers regularly revisit. There you go. True. Their conceptions of what is worth pursuing. Very often human problems arise simply because people are pursuing what they ought not to pursue. That's like, for instance, and this self-deception seems to be a common problem. For instance, in politics, people don't know, or maybe they get too emotionally involved and they really don't know what's going on. They don't understand the political system. They don't understand the three branches of government. They don't understand or know much at all about the Constitution, the 7 acts and the 27 amendments, and that there's literally been hundreds of proposed amendments over the years, but only 27 have ever taken. So it's very difficult to change it, and it should be, as Thomas Jefferson said in the Declaration of Independence, government should not be changed for light and transient causes. See, now if you know that stuff, I'm going to say you're probably pretty equipped to vote, right? What are the job requirements of a president, of a congressperson, of a senator, of a representative, of your governor? You know, if you don't know these things, please don't get out and vote. Stay home until you know what's going on, right? Humans often set up inconsistent standards, expecting others to be satisfied with what we are ourselves would not be satisfied with, or be judged by criteria that we would resent were these same criteria applied to us. I saw a video from the 70s where a bunch of college students, this is a little off track, but anyways, it's related, it's relevant, where a bunch of college students were asking questions of some expert, a professor, maybe an economist or whatever. And they were very informed. They actually knew things, right? Today, students aren't learning things. They're pretty null and void. I mean, you can watch YouTube videos of the man or the woman in the street asking questions of what's going on. Or if you hate the current president, why? You know, and people are just very, very vague and insignificant and circumloquacious about giving any specifics whatsoever as to why the current president is bad, or maybe why the Constitution is old. Well, yeah, it's old, but it was set up as in a very general way. It's kind of like a general outline, and the founders, you know, did that for a reason, because they knew changes would occur, needs would change, as the population grew, right? And as uh, the economies got more complex, so our world issues became more complex or whatever, right? So, anyways, identify your problems explicitly and then analyze them. We cannot solve a problem that we do not recognize we have. The first step in becoming an activist problem solver is to become an activist in stating problems. Many leave problems at the level of vague dissatisfaction, knowing that something is wrong, but not clarifying exactly what that something is. Others express discontent, but do not come to terms with the root cause. It is not in your interest to hide from problems or to wait for them to solve themselves. Oh yeah, that's the uh, scientists in Gulliver's Travels. Uh, I think Gulliver and one of the lesser, not a scientist, but a wannabe scientist, actually solved the problem of the lodestone. The lodestone had been reversed there. It's actually a piece of the land that had been peeled off from the earth and a lodestone with a negative or an opposing magnet to that of the earth, magnetic charge or whatever the proper term is. And it allowed that part of the earth to be a floating island above the earth, right? So it's physically floating and metaphorically floating. The scientists are metaphorically and physically floating above the common people below, right? Who are starving and have all kinds of problems, while the great thinkers are coming up with useless solutions to problems that don't exist or problems that are not as significant as those down below, such as keeping peace, not allowing people to die in great numbers, and starvation, and so forth, right? And anyway, so Gulliver and this wannabe scientist kid figure out what the problem is, you know. And one of the scientists says, "Oh, you know, they found out that the floating island was sinking, heading towards the Earth. Oh no, disaster!" So he says, "I am going to stop and think about it. Let me just sit over here and think about it." Right? And while he's thinking, Gulliver and his young friend there do something about it, right? And then all of a sudden they reverse the lodestone and the island starts to float up. And the scientist finds out, you know, sir, Gulliver and the kid come back up to the guy. He's like the king of scientists or whatever his title is. And they said, sir, the island is floating back up in place. And he goes, see, by doing nothing, the problem has solved itself. That doesn't happen, right? Happens rarely. Winning, whining and pining, bitching and complaining. Oh my gosh, yes. Or just sitting there vaguely discontented usually are not effective problem solving chances. So this is what I hate, although sometimes a wait and see strategy is appropriate. But there is a preponderance, and I see this with sport fans. You know, there's an ongoing problem, and they know what the problem is, but all season, like in baseball, all season long, game after game, week after week, month after month, right? It's just bitching and complaining and whining and pining for better times and better coaches and better players and better hitting and better pitching. Stop it. Stop it. It's in a bad state right now. It might not be like this the whole season because fortunes, a lot of times, I don't want to say more times than most, but many times I've seen teams that were really bad end up being really good later in the season and vice versa, right? Or being okay in the season, regular season, but in the playoffs just coming alive, right? And also vice versa. With the number one team, I remember it was 115 win Seattle Mariners back some 20 years ago or so, whatever it was. They get into the playoffs and they're one and done. First series gone. You know, they didn't even get to the second series, right? Anyways, once you have enumerated, look that word up if you don't know what it means. That's a good word. Enumerate. It's got number in there, right? Maybe that has something to do with it, right? Definitionally. Articulated, evaluated your goals, purposes, and needs. Enumerate and articulate your problems explicitly. Oh, yes. You got to get specific, right? That's why you got to take that Briggs-Myers typology test. You got to write out a plan. You got to talk to people. You got to talk to experts, listen to experts, go online and listen to webinars or videos, go to seminars offline, talk to people you know, friends you know, or people at work, or maybe you're in college. There's a lot of experts at colleges, with PhDs in the particular field that they're teaching in, right? Many of the problems we face are complex. Yes, that gets a double highlight right there. Such as relationships, such as long-term relationships, such as education, such as finding a career and sustaining a career, such as money, finding money, having enough money for the here and now to pay for our bills, to be responsible and accountable for ourselves so we're not a ward to the state or to our family and friends or other individuals and groups. That we have not only enough money through the working years, but in the retirement years, right? I've got a nice pension laid aside and Social Security and investments and all kinds of other things. And plus, I'm still working after I've retired, and I retired a little early because I planned it that way. And I actually made, with my retirement money and my investments and a couple of classes I'm teaching and coaching I'm doing, I'm making more money now than I was before I retired. Usually it goes in the other way. What are you doing? What are you doing with your life, right? And complex problems have multiple intricacies. If you don't know what these words are, please look them up, right? Often problems can be approached from many standpoints, from many standpoints from the point of view of different subjects. We therefore need to be skilled at determining the domains of thinking. Domain is like a home or an area or a locale of thinking inherent in the problems we face, and at doing our best thinking within each domain. Take, for instance, the problem of drug abuse in the United States. It's actually gotten worse. Fentanyl, all that stuff, right? It's become, has many dimensions, right? So the question might be, what can be done to reduce the number of people who abuse drugs? To effectively think through this problem, we need to think within at least 3 domains of thinking, right? Culturally, sociological, psychological, biological, and political, right? I was listening to somebody speak the other day. There's talk about prices going up. And one of the reasons why prices have gone up is because the previous administration was allowing illegals to buy homes for very cheap. You're supposed to put down 10%. They were putting down 2-3%. Very cheap down payment. And even if they couldn't pay, the government would reimburse them. And that was causing higher prices because of the fact that the money wasn't being paid for the home through that individual. It had to come from somewhere. So taxes went up, right? Taxes go up, prices go up, inflation goes up, the government borrows more money, inflation goes up, prices go up, right? Understand how economics works, understand how the government works, right? And there were other secondary issues in critical thinking, common sense economics. There's the idea of secondary effects, right? You think there's the primary issue. Well, all we have to do is increase. What do you say? Most people can't afford things, especially low-income people. So just increase the minimum wage. It's 15, make it 30. First of all, don't jump that high. You got to do it in slow increments, right? And if you don't understand that, why? Look it up, read about it. But anyway, say you jump from $15 to $30 an hour. What's going to happen? Well, first of all, you have to think about the secondary effects. The majority of businesses out there, about 98%, are small businesses. The number one cost to all businesses, large or small, is payroll. If payroll jumps 100%, right? You go from 15%, you double it basically, right? If it jumps from 15 to 30%, then things are just going to get astronomically expensive. So what's going to happen? Well, you're going to increase prices for your products to pay if you're going to be hiring employees. You're probably going to lay off employees. You'll probably have fewer full-time employees, more unemployment, meaning that there's more money that the government has to borrow in order to pay for those who are on unemployment, right? See where this is going? And then also you probably cut benefits as well. Well, I can't afford to give you the insurance that I used to give, or it's a much cheaper, less expensive insurance, but you got to pay for half of it, or I can't afford it at all. You got to get your own, which really will increase the cost of things, right? So, bottom line, if you go from $15 an hour to $30 an hour, it will cause the economy to head in the wrong direction, not in the right direction, right? Anyways, culture, you got to look at those 5 areas, right? So the most issues, especially like unemployment or employment or the economy, are complex, right? Very multifaceted, not as uh, simple as they seem. Like when a president's in office, say Biden was in office, prices go up. Biden's fault, not necessarily so. There may be. Here's another one. Here's another one. As far as shipping is concerned, and prices going up for general products, the general price of products in general, right? One of the reasons why is because the cost of shipping has gone up because contractors were contracting illegals or foreigners who are more risky, less expensive to hire, and they don't really follow the rules and regulations like the more costly uh, truck drivers who are doing things correctly, right? So all these corners are being cut. It's saving companies, and the companies will use like a broker, a middle person, to hire the truckers. The companies don't hire themselves directly, hire the truckers directly. They go through a broker, right? Like in a stock market, you have a broker. At the broker, you have the stock market and the investor. Well, here you have the broker, you have truckers, and the companies that hire the truckers, right? So instead of going to the more safe, rule following truckers with experience who are safe, you go to the unsafe, and they end up, breaking the law, and they end up not adhering to the rules of the road, or they drink and do drugs, and there's been an increase in accidents of people being killed on the roadways, and because of all the liability and the goods not getting where they need to be, and all of that, the problems, the liabilities, and ineffective transportation, prices have gone up in general. And that's got nothing to do with the president. The president could step in and say, don't do these things. We'll make it against the law. But as of yet, that issue hasn't been addressed. Or maybe they don't know about it. Anyways, figure out the information you need and actively seek that information. Virtually all problem solving requires the acquisition of key relevant information. For any problem, like I was doing there, right, with prices rising. For any problem you are trying to solve, figure out the information. The relevant information is determined by the nature of the questions asked. That's true. Right? You got to ask the right questions. You got to ask relevant questions. You have to ask pertinent questions. You have to ask comprehensive questions that will cover the range of issues with great depth and breadth, right? Not superficial questions, irrelevant questions, ignorant questions, non-applicable questions, right? Carefully analyze, interpret, and evaluate the information you collect, drawing what reasonable inferences you can. Having relevant information is a necessary condition to solving a problem, but it is never sufficient. True. And it sounds like this is stuff that you would probably use, or methodologies that you would use in the workplace, or if you're working for the government solving big problems. But this is also for mid-size and minor problems, minor, mid, and large problems for organizations and groups and individuals. This applies. These techniques apply, right? This book is geared towards students, college students, individuals, right? But at the same time, these methodologies apply to groups or larger organizations, right? Figure out your options for action, evaluate them. Sometimes the information you collect will explicitly define your options for action. Sometimes, however, you will have to make further inferences from your inferences, right? To figure out your options for action. In one sense, these considerations are extensions of the information interpreting process. In another sense, they go beyond it because they take us to the level of action, right? As a critical thinker, you would carefully evaluate these options and not simply go with the first one, right, that pops up. Like when you're looking for a career. My dad's an accountant, I'm going to be an accountant. The popular jobs are STEM or green jobs. I'm worried about the environment. I'm going to be an ecologist, right, or environmental engineer. Knowing nothing about the pay or the requirements or whether or not you have the proper mental acuity or interest or motivation, is it something that you will get bored with or find boring or uninteresting, because you're looking in the wrong place. You're looking at the money, the income. You're looking at the relevance as far as to who's working in those jobs. Well, my friend works in the job. My friends work in those jobs. My parents work in XYZ jobs, whatever, right? So that's from the outside in. You have to go from the inside out, right? What are your basic core skills, right? What are your basic needs, interests, desires? What are your basic skills, knowledge, and abilities, right? Get that all figured out and then match that to a potential career, right? And then you have to keep working it. It's not going to solve itself with the first application. You might have to apply yourself or your thinking, problem solving thinking to the scenarios at hand, multiple times, over and over again, right? Took me a while. Probably took me, when I first started trying to figure things out, it took me probably a good 5 to 10 years before I probably got it mostly figured out, right? Especially if you value Jack's friendship, you would want to make sure that you are not misinterpreting the situation. You would but be cautious in your action, sticking closely to the facts, being willing to reinterpret what is happening. So again, you have to continually re-examine, reevaluate, step back, look, add, delete, change, direction, emphasis, whatever, right? It's especially the more complex it is, the more of the examining and reevaluating and changing, reapplying of yourself and your thinking, and you'd have to do, right? As critical thinkers, we want to make sure that our actions are rational and wise, that they make good sense. As a result, we often review our options before we act, and we select an option with due consideration for its likely implications. We routinely ask a variety of questions, right? And here they are. You can go through those yourself. There it is, right? Many people have suffered grievous pain or damage, or have caused grievous pain or damage to others as a result of their failure to give due consideration to the implications of their decisions. That's huge. That's huge. A lot of people, too many people, many people are just knee-jerk reflex emotional, right? They get an inkling of what the answer is or what's going on, and from a very surface oriented perspective, they come to conclusions or make decisions, right? That's dangerous, right? As an activist problem solver, you want to continually think of your decisions in terms of long-term set of strategies, right? That's huge. What do I want in the long run? What is worth achieving in the long run? What in the long run will make my life more meaningful, right? These are, let's give that a different color. These are important questions for you to ask frequently. You should be alert to self-deceptive dichotomy. Die means two, throw the die. Well, that's dice. There's two dice. How many sides? Six? Nine? What is six? How many sides on a dice? Six, right? That often is present in human life, daily decision making based on short term gratification juxtaposition with episodic lip service. Oh, that's nice. I'm going to call that just because that's an interesting phrase. Episodic lip service to important long term values on ceremonial occasions. Oh, nice terminology. Look at the diction word choice. Look at the language there. Right? And then again, I'm going to highlight this whole thing. Let's give it a different color. What do we got? Green, yellow. Let's go. That work? That's kind of it. All right. In this common pattern, we live for values that we don't explicitly admit to, whereas we frequently espouse. Don't know what the word means. Look it up. Higher values that we ignore in our daily decision making. Adopt a strategic approach to the problem and follow through on that strategy. Self-explanatory, is it not? When you act out, monitor, right? Monitor the implication of your action at the beginning of emergency. So you really have to watch things, right? Be vigilant, right? Life is often filled with surprises. No kidding. Surprise is not always good. You surprised me. Well, you scared the crap out of me. Is that good? No. I was surprised to get an F. I was surprised to find out that I have a life-threatening disease. You know, surprise me doesn't always have a positive connotation, right? What looks like the best option today may turn out to be a mistake tomorrow. What looks like our best course of action may shift as we see concretely. What does that mean? What does concrete mean? Where our first course of action is taking us. As critical thinkers, we must be willing to backtrack, shift direction, turn ourselves inside out or outside in. That's why when I teach writing, essay writing, you're working from various drafts. First draft, second draft, third draft, fourth draft, fifth draft, and then editing, and then you have a peer review. You have one person look at it, maybe two people, three people, depending on the complexity, the need, or the importance, right? We realize that the facts should be the final determinant in our thinking. Facts. We also realize not feelings, because facts don't care about your feelings, right? I would love to be a billionaire. I have a feeling that I'm going to be a billionaire. My feelings are I'd love to be a billionaire. Yeah? A lot of people feel that way. Is it going to happen? Probably 99% chance of not happening, right? Even if you seek it. Because the economies are very challenging mistress, I guess we could say, right? The unknown of what will work and what won't work. And it like, what was I watching? Stephen Jobs said, in regards to his computer, his desktop computer, what was it? The Apple One, or what was the Apple Two was the first programmable computer, I think, right? It was just looked like a keyboard. I don't even know. Did it have a screen? But anyways, that was for the real nerds, right? But anyways, he said, how do people know what they need if they haven't seen it yet, right? People didn't know that they needed PCs, personal computers, right? Maybe they didn't. Maybe we don't. But a need was established. You know? Believe me, advertisers and marketers will create a need. And many of us are duped into believing that there's a need, right? We also realize that some facts do not emerge until we act. Thinking in this flexible manner can be challenging because the human mind naturally closes down. You have to understand how the human mind works. That's important too. Seeing its thinking is good enough, even when it hasn't clearly thought through the problem. And that's dangerous. That is dangerous. Very dangerous. Oops, sorry. Avoiding the pitfalls of problem solving, success in problem solving is not merely a matter of walking through a set procedure or following someone else's rules for problem solving. Problem solving can go wrong in too many ways. Bingham. It is good to have general guideposts for problem solving. That's an important point. It is also important to keep in mind that the major ways by which thinking can be bad, right? That's huge. Let's give that a different color. Sensitivity to the elements and standards of reason is critical. An examination of the dimension of problem solving that we have identified reveals that some of the elements of thought are prominent, right? So these, you have to look at the words that are italicized, right? Figure out, regularly rearticulate goals, purposes, and needs, recognize problems as emerging obstacles to reaching your goals, achieve your purposes, and satisfying your needs. Identify your problems explicitly, analyze them. Wherever possible, take problems one by one, state the problem as clearly and precisely as you can. Study the problem to make clear the kind of problem you are dealing with. Figure out, for example, what sorts of things you are going to have to do to solve, right? So problems, figure out the information. A lot of this should be familiar. These terms that are popping up that are highlighted have been used before. Carefully analyze, interpret, evaluate information you collect, drawing whatever reasonable inferences you can. Figure out your options for action, evaluate them. What can you do in the short term, long term, and so forth, right? Adopt a strategic approach to the problem and follow through on that strategic strategy. May include direct action, carefully thought through wait and see strategy. When you act, monitor the implications of your action as they begin to emerge. Be ready at a moment's notice to revise your strategy and so forth, right? Missing elements and italics are our concept, assumption, and point of view. These elements too are essential to effective problem solving. If you remember our list, you can go back to chapter 2, right? 3 lists, essential lists that you'll need to understand good critical thinking, right? The only reason they are not mentioned explicitly is that they would have to be mentioned for each of the dimensions. Right? Figure out, regularly rearticulate your goals, purposes, and needs. Yeah, come on. Now we're repeating ourselves, right? Which, I mean, that's learning. Identify your problems. There's that key word explicitly, right? Analyze them. Analyze problems using the elements of thought. It should be clear by now that elements of thought play a central role in all thinking, including the thinking we use when attempting to solve our problems. In addition to thinking through problems using the dimension of problem solving, we have highlighted, we also could analyze the logic of the problem we're trying to solve using the elements of thought in an explicit and systematic way. Bingo. What are the elements of thought? Here they are. They're highlighted, right? Or italicized, right? Because these parts of thinking are present whenever we reason through an issue, we can analyze and assess them for quality. Right? Key points. Put another way, whenever we are facing a problem in our lives or something we are trying to figure out, we can look closely at each of the elements of our reasoning and upgrade how well we are using each of the elements, right? So it's good to have this textbook, and I've mentioned numerous times that you should probably buy it. You can get it online relatively inexpensively. Amazon, probably the best place to get it. There used to be other places, but now with fees, you used to be able to get access to textbooks through, I can't think of the name of the source. You could go right there and hit for whatever you needed in the search engine and search it out. But now you got to pay a fee just to even search for something. Right? Everybody's upping their ante, upping their prices. Right? Purpose question. This goes into all that stuff in more detail. Right. These exercises are great. I mean, there's a lot here. As I said, there's actually more here than we can use or have time for, right? Information, concept, assumption. And those are all terms we've gone over before. The art of problem solving. If you aspire to become a critical thinker, you must develop an activist problem solver, or do as such. Develop an activist problem solver, you must recognize that critical thinking is an essential in defining orientation. Critical thinking sheds essential light on problem solving, making clear that problem solving cannot be reduced to a simplistic procedure. So true. There are dimensions to problem solving, dimensions we can use to guide our thinking. These dimensions cannot be reduced to strict method for finding correct answers. The more dimensions to a problem, the greater it is. Is its complexity. Consider the dimensions of figuring out the information we need. As you remember, virtually all problem solving requires the acquisition of key relevant information. For any problem you are trying to solve, figure out the information, not a keyword, you need an actively keyword. So here's, if you're as a critical thinker, you're always looking for keywords and phrases to zero in on. Did you see that movie, Dr. Nash, A Beautiful Mind? If you when you see him, he's lost, he's schizophrenic, and he believes that he's helping the United States decode messages that are coming in through periodicals, magazines, and newspapers. So he's got magazines and newspapers spread all over the place, and certain things are being highlighted. They do it through CGI, right? Special effects, if you will, I guess, not special effects, but CGI. And you see certain things highlighted. It's kind of like this. Kind of looks like this, right? So he's highlighting main points being made in a paragraph, maybe the topic sentence, key phrases and words, maybe key phrases and words in the paragraphs, sentences that are related to the topic sentence and or back to the main thesis of the chapter and or of the text overall, right? Anyways, let's continue. I think we're almost done. Yes. Yeah. To achieve success as a problem solver, therefore, you must begin to form a mental map of the variety of types of problems. But there are as many types of problems as there are types of questions we may seek to answer. And there is no easy way to develop such a map, right? True. We can divide questions into types in an unlimited number of ways. True. You can make it overly complex. And maybe this methodology inherently has that element to it. But, at least read through it, try to apply it. And if things get too complicated, simplify it on your own terms. use your sense of, your intuition, your sense of fair play for yourself. And you can kind of feel it. It's getting too complex. I'm getting lost. Let me try to work it again. I got 2 or 3 times. No. I got to take another approach, right? So sometimes in going down one avenue, you try again. Give it the old college try. Don't just do it once. That sucks. Try it 2 or 3 times. I've tried stuff 2, 3 times or more, and it's actually ended up working. But generally, you can tell after a few tries, 2, 3, whether or not the path you're heading down is going to work or it's viable. Or it might be not working now, maybe work later, such as college. College didn't work for me the first time or the second time. But the third time it did because I really knew what I was doing. Right? I figured it out. For example, in this book, we have frequently drawn a distinction between types of questions by discipline, right? We also have differentiated questions into types by system, true, right? There is no person or group to which we can turn for a definitive map of question types. Even if there were, we still would have to personally internalize the logic of those types to use them effectively in problem solving. Therefore, each of us must begin to develop our own mental maps of question types based on, there it is again, to consideration, our knowledge of established classifications, the kinds of questions that are especially important in our lives. Right? Conclusion, there it is. In this chapter, we have focused on the importance of decision-making, problem-solving in human life. As you see, there is much overlap between the two processes. Decision-making is an inherent part of the problem solving. For whenever we think through a problem, we, in the end, must make a final decision. But of course, many decisions we need to make are not necessarily related to a problem per se. Nevertheless, as you have seen in this chapter, the skills of mind that are useful in reasoning through problems and coming to rational decisions are often the same. Yeah, so no one fully masters decision making and problem solving, but it's about improvement, right? No one fully masters decision making, problem solving. About improvement, about getting better. What do? Reflect, determine which problems in our lives are big problems, focusing especially on those, systematically adopting strategies. Like this book is really good at giving a lot of suggestions, right? Sometimes it's overly complex. You don't have to do all of these things all the time. But the first time through, stumble through it. Push your way through, work your way through, using as much of these strategies as you can, at least in the beginning. And then as you get more familiar with problems and problem solving, you can kind of pick and choose. Build your own problem solving methodologies, picking and choosing ways of doing it. Preferably less complex than this, ultimately, right? I don't do anything remotely close to something that's complex. But in order to get where I got to, I had to start with the complex, right? That's life. In constructing these strategies, it is of our interest to think and act so as to maximize our awareness of what? Knowledge of major decisions of our childhood, major decisions of adolescence. Remember we went over this? The patterns that underlie how we approach decisions and problems, the extent to which our decisions and approaches to problems are based on immediate gratification. This stuff is good. This is gold. This outline, this is kind of what you need, right? If you don't really understand, don't try to get caught up in the details. You want to get a general overview of each chapter, right? And the overviews are usually done at the end, right? Get a general, like, what is the Constitution? Well, it's got 7 articles, it's got 26 amendments, but what is it? At its core, the basic core principles, there's 6 of them, but to summarize those principles, number 1 is the people are sovereign. You and I, the people, are sovereign. And in order to keep the people sovereign, we must limit the power of the government. So we create 3 branches that reinforce and work with each other. They share powers, right? Bills are passed and made laws by Congress. The judicial monitors, interprets those laws, and then the executive executes, right, those laws, or makes necessary decisions, immediate decisions, emergency. That's why he has executive orders, right? But they only last for 4 years. So this is all very well thought through, right? And that is generally the Constitution. And the law of the land is a constitutional republic. So I've just summarized the whole thing of what is a constitutional republic. Well, I just told you what the Constitution is. A republic is basically what we got, federal and state. And the power is run through the state at the people level, right? Right? Not the federal. There are no kings and queens at the federal level, right? We are the kings and queens dispersed throughout the 340 million people. We make decisions, right? At the local level, state level, government, national level, right? That's what our government is, right? I covered. So, and I haven't gone into the particulars. I haven't said what the 7 articles are, or even gone into specifics about the 6 principal elements of the Constitution, right? Or what the amendments are and so forth, right? So I have a very good general understanding. And this is how I do my problem solving as well. If I need to, I go back to the book, as Einstein said. Stuff you need to memorize, put it here. The details, the stuff that you need to look up periodically, leave it in the book or the text. Because our brains don't have the capacity to put all the details into it. We think best in general terms, right? Right. So I think that's it. Are we done? I can tell I'm done because there's a nerve on my forehead that's starting to go blink. So I'm taxed out. Anyways, argumentative theory and critical thinking. So we're moving on after this. And we'll move forward from there. That's it for now.